For 15 years, nobody had ever heard Coach Miller raise his voice. Even the most troublesome kid showed him respect. But when the gangs came to town, it became clear that this silence wasn't weakness. It was enormous power being kept under control. Coach Miller's story actually went back 30 years. When he served as a Marine drill instructor at Parris Island, he had transformed thousands of young men into soldiers. "Respect isn't taken by force, it's earned," he used to say. After retiring, he settled in this small town and began teaching children life lessons through sports coaching. He never raised his voice, just maintained discipline through his gaze alone. Kids behaved differently around him, more respectful, more focused, more secure. But now there were gangs threatening those children, and the Marine spirit that Coach Miller had suppressed for 30 years was about to awaken again. Hello and welcome to The Last Stand. Have you ever had a coach or teacher in your life who guided you and set you on the right path? Share in the comments how that person impacted you. Richard Coach Miller was 65 years old, medium height, with silver hair and a calm demeanor. He'd settled in Cedar Valley 15 years ago and had been volunteering to teach basketball to kids ever since. He never took any payment, just said he enjoyed watching the children develop. "Danny, keep your hands up on defense," he said in a calm voice. He looked at 14-year-old Danny and nodded. Coach Miller's teaching style was completely different. He never yelled, just spoke, but somehow every word was heard. Kids acted different around him. No cursing, no fighting. They treated each other with respect. "Play team ball, Tommy. Basketball isn't a one-man game," he told 16-year-old Tommy. Tommy nodded and passed the ball to his teammate. The townspeople loved Coach Miller. They wondered how he disciplined the kids, how he kept them in line, but nobody had ever asked about his past. The first signs started 3 weeks ago. Young men from out of town began hanging around the park. These guys in black hoodies with covered faces, it wasn't clear what they wanted. Sheriff Williams was worried about the situation. "Gangs from the big cities are starting to come to small towns to sell drugs," he'd said at the town meeting. Coach Miller had heard these conversations but didn't pay much attention. He only cared about the kids. Until the gangs came right to the basketball court. "Hey, old man," one of the gang members had called out last Monday. "This court's ours now. Don't let the kids come here." Coach Miller had stopped and slowly looked at the man. Something changed in his eyes for just a moment, just 1 second. Then he returned to his normal calm state. "This is public property," he said quietly. "The kids will keep playing." The gang member laughed. "We'll see about that, old man." That evening, as Coach Miller walked home, he remembered something he'd learned 30 years ago. The moment you admit a problem exists, you start finding the solution. The gangs were getting bolder every day. They came to the basketball court to intimidate the kids and try to sell drugs. Parents got worried and some children stopped coming to practice. "Coach, I can't come anymore," Danny had said last Wednesday. "My mom's scared." Coach Miller's face didn't change. He just nodded. "I understand. We don't want to worry your family." But something was starting to change inside. Coach Miller went to the basketball court every evening, examining the traces the gangs left behind. Where they stood, what times they came, how many people they were. This attention to detail was a sign that he wasn't just an ordinary coach. But nobody noticed yet. "Coach, why do you go there?" Tommy had asked one day. "It's dangerous." "Just looking," Coach Miller had said. "No harm in looking." But he wasn't just looking. He was tracking, analyzing, forming strategy. His habits from 30 years ago were coming back. Monday afternoon, Coach Miller went to the basketball court for practice. This time, only 5 kids came. The others stayed home because they were scared. "Come on, kids, let's start practice," Coach Miller said in his normal, calm voice. Just then, a black car approached the court. 6 people got out, all young, all looking aggressive. The gang leader, Marcus, walked toward Coach Miller. "We told you, old man. This place is ours now." The kids were scared. Danny hid behind Coach Miller. Tommy stood frozen, holding the basketball. Coach Miller stood there, hands at his sides, maintaining his calm posture. But there was a different gleam in his eyes. "Kids, go home," Coach Miller said in a calm but determined voice. "Now." "No, Coach, we can't leave you alone," Tommy had said. "I said go." This time, there was authority in Coach Miller's voice, a tone the kids had never heard before. They immediately ran away. Marcus laughed. "Smart kids, I suggest you leave too, old man." Coach Miller didn't move from his spot. "This is where these kids belong. You're going to leave them alone." "Or what?" Marcus stepped closer. "You gonna stop us?" Coach Miller's posture changed at that moment. His shoulders straightened, his chin lifted. His eyes surveyed Marcus as if evaluating him. "I'm going to tell you something," Coach Miller said. His voice was low but clearly audible. "I don't want to see anyone here who's going to hurt these kids." Marcus's friends started laughing. "Who does this old guy think he is?" But Marcus wasn't laughing. In Coach Miller's eyes, in that cold, calculating look, there was something familiar. Power, experience, danger. "Who are you, old man?" Marcus asked. "I'm this town's basketball coach," Coach Miller said, "and I'm going to protect these kids." "You gonna call the cops?" Marcus asked, mockingly. Coach Miller shook his head. "No, the police won't be necessary." This answer surprised Marcus. As an experienced gang leader, he knew what this kind of calm confidence could mean. That evening, when Coach Miller went home, his neighbor, Mrs. Blank, Parker, was watching him from the window. "Richard," she called out, "this gang situation looks serious. Let's call the police." Coach Miller stopped. "We'll handle it, Alice. Don't worry." "How will you handle it? You're just a coach." These words awakened something inside Coach Miller. The phrase, "just a coach," brought back memories from 30 years ago. That night, Coach Miller opened the old trunks in his garage. Inside were old photographs, medals, and documents. Parris Island photos, drill instructor badges, training certificates. He picked up a photograph. It read, "Staff Sergeant Richard Miller, Parris Island Marine Corps Recruit Depot, 1985, 2000. In the photo was a young Marine drill instructor, hands clasped behind his back, looking with a stern expression. That young man was now 65 years old and had hidden this identity for 15 years. But apparently it couldn't be hidden anymore. "Once a Marine, always a Marine," he whispered quietly. The next day, Coach Miller went to the basketball court as usual. But this time was different. He was tracking the gang's movements, noting their numbers, identifying their strengths and weaknesses. His 30 years of drill instructor experience had kicked in. Reading human psychology, providing leadership, maintaining discipline, it was all coming back. Marcus's gang was 6 people. Their leader, Marcus, looked like he was 22, 23, seemed experienced. The others were younger, 16, 19 years old. Most were just following their leader. Coach Miller saw something familiar in these young people. Lack of discipline, absence of authority, lack of leadership. He'd seen thousands like them at Parris Island. These kids just need proper guidance, he thought, but their leader needs to be dealt with first. That evening, Coach Miller called the sheriff's office and asked for an appointment. "Sheriff Williams, I need to talk about the gang problem," Coach Miller said on the phone. The next morning, they met at the sheriff's office. Sheriff Williams knew Coach Miller, but they weren't close. "Richard, what do you think about this situation?" the sheriff asked. "These kids are looking for a leader," Coach Miller said. "Marcus seems strong, but he's just acting intimidating. Real leadership is something else." Sheriff Williams was surprised. "Where are you getting this analysis from?" Coach Miller paused. He didn't know how to answer this question. He wasn't ready to reveal his 30-year Marine experience yet. "Observation," he said simply. "I've been working with young people for 15 years. So what do you suggest?" "Give me a week. Let's handle this problem." Sheriff Williams looked skeptical. "How are you going to handle it? These are dangerous kids." That familiar gleam appeared in Coach Miller's eyes again. "Trust me, Sheriff, I know a method." Wednesday afternoon, Coach Miller went to the basketball court. He knew the gangs would come. He was ready. At 3 o'clock, the black car came again. Marcus and his gang got out. This time, they looked more aggressive. "You still here, old man?" Marcus yelled. "We told you." Coach Miller stood there, hands clasped behind his back. Exactly the drill instructor posture from 30 years ago. "Marcus," Coach Miller said. He had learned the young men's names. "I need to talk to you. You got nothing to talk to me about. On the contrary, I have a lot I can teach you." This answer surprised Marcus. The old coach's manner was different. More confident, more authoritative. What's that you're gonna teach? Coach Miller slowly approached. He wasn't scared, wasn't worried. Just calm and determined. Real leadership, he said. How respect is earned, how power is used. Marcus laughed but was unsure. You're talking to me about leadership? You're just a basketball coach. Coach Miller stopped. The moment had come. 15 years of silence would end. No, Marcus, Coach Miller said. His voice had changed. Harder, more authoritative. I'm Staff Sergeant Richard Miller, United States Marine Corps. I served 15 years at Parris Island as a drill instructor. I turned over 3-0 young men into Marines. Marcus and his friends froze. The silence lasted a few seconds. Coach Miller's, now Sergeant Miller's, words hung in the air. You're a Marine? One of Marcus's friends asked. For 15 years. Sergeant Miller's posture had completely changed now. Shoulders straight, head up, eyes determined. And now I'm going to tell you something. The gang members stepped backward. They'd heard stories about Marines. You think you're looking for leadership? Sergeant Miller continued. But what you've found is just chaos. Real leadership isn't achieved through fear, but through respect. Marcus tried to pull himself together. That doesn't change anything. There's still 6 of us, and 1 of you. Sergeant Miller smiled. For the first time. But this wasn't a friendly smile. Marcus, let me teach you something. Numbers never matter. Training, discipline, experience matter. His voice was now completely a commander's voice. 30 years of suppressed authority had completely emerged, and I trained young people like you for 15 years. I turned them from troubled kids into proud soldiers. I can offer you the same thing. Marcus was confused. He hadn't expected it to develop this way. What are you saying? I can teach you real leadership, Sergeant Miller said. But it's not the easy way, it's the Marine way. One of the gang members, 17-year-old Kevin, was interested. What do you mean? Discipline, responsibility, teamwork, respect for yourself, respect for others. Sergeant Miller's voice softened a bit. You're not troubled kids. You just need guidance. Marcus was undecided. His gang was looking at him, waiting for him to make a decision. What's in it for us? He asked. Real power, society's respect, a future. Sergeant Miller paused. Or we can stay here and wait for the police to come. Your choice. This wasn't a bluff. There was certainty in Sergeant Miller's voice. Kevin stepped forward. Sergeant, if you teach us, we'll listen. Marcus looked at him harshly, but Kevin was determined. The other gang members started joining him too. One condition, Sergeant Miller said. No hurting the kids, no harming the town. Until training is finished, this is a safe zone. Marcus hesitated. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but if this doesn't work, it will work, I promise. The next morning, Sergeant Miller was waiting at the basketball court. It was 7 a.m. and 3 people from the gang had come. Kevin, Carlos, and Miguel. Marcus had come late. The leadership test was beginning. You're late, Marcus, Sergeant Miller said. So what? Leaders arrive on time. They set an example for their team. Sergeant Miller's voice was calm but definite. If you're late again, training's over. Marcus had never experienced this kind of discipline. But he had to submit to Sergeant Miller's authority. Okay. Okay, what? Marcus was surprised. Okay, Sergeant? That's right. Respect is the beginning of everything. Training started this way. Every day at 7 a.m. at the basketball court. Not physical training, mental training. Leadership, responsibility, teamwork. Sergeant Miller taught them the same lessons he taught at Parris Island. But this time with more patience, more compassion. 2 weeks later, the townspeople began to notice the difference. The gang members were no longer harming the town. Some were even helping elderly people. Mrs. Parker was surprised when she saw Sergeant Miller at the store. Richard, what happened to those gang kids? They're not causing trouble anymore. They needed a little guidance. Sergeant Miller said humbly, What did you do to them? Sergeant Miller smiled. I showed them who they could become. Kevin was the kid who experienced the biggest change in town. He was now helping elderly people with their yard work. Miguel started teaching basketball to little kids. Even Marcus was changing, less aggressive, more thoughtful. But nobody knew Sergeant Miller's real identity. The gang members kept it secret. At the end of the third week, another gang came to town. Bigger, more dangerous. Marcus's old partners had come to understand why he had gone soft. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" asked Tony, the new gang's leader. "We're handling our business, Tony, no problem. There's a big problem. You're not our guy anymore. Either you come back or—" The threat hung in the air. Tony's gang was more violent. They had guns. Marcus was scared. He'd received training but wasn't ready for this kind of confrontation yet. "Can I have a week to think?" Marcus said. 3 days. Then we want an answer." After Tony's gang left, Marcus found Sergeant Miller in panic. "Sergeant, there's a problem. Tony wants me to come back." Sergeant Miller remained calm. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. They carry guns. They could kill us." "Decisions made from fear are never right," Sergeant Miller said. "What does your heart say?" Marcus stopped. He thought, "I want to stay here. This lifestyle is better. Then we'll stay, and you'll lead your team. But how?" "Trust me. There's a plan." 3 days later, Tony's gang came back. They came to the basketball court, expecting an answer from Marcus. Marcus was ready. Kevin, Carlos, and Miguel were with him. And of course, Sergeant Miller. "Have you made your decision, Marcus?" Tony asked. "Yes, I'm staying here." Tony laughed. "Well then, you're finished." When Tony pulled out his gun, Sergeant Miller stepped forward. "Young man, put that gun down." Tony was surprised. He didn't know this old man. "Who are you?" "My name is Staff Sergeant Richard Miller, United States Marine Corps, 15 years Parris Island drill instructor." Sergeant Miller's voice was commanding. "And you're going to put that gun down now?" Tony's gang stepped back. They were affected by the stories they'd heard about Marines. "This is our business, old man," Tony said, but his voice was shaking. "This became my business now." Sergeant Miller approached. He wasn't afraid. "These kids are now under my responsibility." Tony's gun in his hand started shaking. The authority of the man in front of him was affecting him. "If you try to harm these kids, you deal with me," Sergeant Miller continued. "And I made 3-0 kids better than you. You can be one of them too, or get out of here." Tony was undecided. His gang was looking at him. "This isn't over," Tony finally said. "For me it is," Sergeant Miller said definitively. "Go." Tony and his gang left. They never came back. A week after the incident, the people of Cedar Valley had learned Sergeant Miller's story. Marcus and his gang had told the real story. Sheriff Williams called Sergeant Miller to his office. "Richard, you've lived here for 15 years but never said who you were." Sergeant Miller sat calmly. "It wasn't necessary. Everyone who saw how you changed these kids is curious. You didn't just protect them, you taught them life lessons." Mrs. Parker also came to visit Sergeant Miller. "Richard, you've been our neighbor for 15 years. You never bragged. You always stayed humble. Marines don't brag." "They do their duty," Sergeant Miller said. Sheriff Williams stood up and extended his hand. "Staff Sergeant Richard Miller, you are the real protector of this town. We want you to serve as honorary deputy sheriff." As Sergeant Miller shook hands, Marcus, Kevin, Carlos, and Miguel entered through the door. "Sergeant, we came to thank you," Marcus said. "I don't know what would have happened without you." "These kids are the real heroes," Sergeant Miller said. "They chose to change. I just showed the way." Mrs. Parker couldn't hold back her tears. "This is why this town loves you, Richard. You never take credit for yourself." Sergeant Miller smiled. For the first time, he was truly happy. From that day on, Sergeant Miller no longer hid his identity. He worked as both a basketball coach and youth counselor. Marcus and his team became the town's volunteer security team. Kevin applied to the police academy. Carlos decided to study business. Miguel decided to become a teacher. And Marcus? He also applied to the Marine Corps. "Sergeant, you taught me real leadership," Marcus had said in his final days. "Now I want to teach others too. Once a Marine, always a Marine," Sergeant Miller had said proudly. The identity he had hidden for 15 years was now the town's most valuable treasure. And that old basketball coach was actually a living legend. He had taught children not just basketball, but life. Most importantly, he had shown that it's never too late. If you enjoy these powerful stories, don't forget to subscribe to the Last Stand channel. We'll continue to bring you more hero stories every day.